Welcome. We will let you know when we will start and count down before.
Where do you join you from? Let us know in the comment field. Do you already know our speaker? Give a shout out and let us know how.
Ask anything during the session in the comment field, and we will bring it up to the speaker or answer it in the chat. Are you ready? We start in 30 seconds from now.
Welcome to this micro course, providing you with best practice skills and know-how. This session is given to you by the Van Haren Group, your partner to enable best practice learning. With your host, Maurits van der Plas.
Hi everyone, welcome to another micro course. This time it's beyond SLAs, building better experiences with XLAs. Together with Neil Keating. Neil, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Looking forward what you're going to tell us. I would say take it away. So Neil is from XLAs, has lots of experience in the service management space for many years. I think this is the first time he's going to tell you more about this subject. That's a little joke. Looking forward to enrich us on this, Neil. So take it away.
Thank you very much, Maurits. Hi everybody and welcome. Thanks for taking the time to come and listen to our micro course on building a better experience with XLAs. So I'm going to introduce myself and company in a minute, but a couple of things I'm just going to go through with you, so help you sort of understand what I'm going to try and cover for you today. Talk a bit about who the company are, where we're from, my role. I'm going to talk about really then what is experience and what is the experience economy? Why is this important? Why are lots of organizations doing this? And then, of course, we're trying to build beyond SLAs. So does that mean SLAs are bad? And how do you do that if you want to go across beyond SLAs? What are the standards? What are the frameworks that you might be able to take away and use? And then we'll talk about what XLAs are. So quite a bit to cover for you in the next sort of 40 minutes or so. Any questions, please put them on the chat. I'll try and answer as much as I can throughout the session for you. Okay, so as Maurits said there, my name is Neil Keating. I work for a company called XLAs. I guess my focus really is on making sure customers get the right experience measures, the right experience metrics that they need. But let me tell you a bit about the company. The company, XLAs, we've been doing this for a long time. So I've been involved in experience management personally for about 8 years. So I know I've got a lot of hands-on experience, having built lots of XLAs for lots of different types of organizations. We've now got organizations in London, that's where I'm based. We've got colleagues in our office in Amsterdam as well. we are probably the largest pure play experience management organization globally. And we have certainly built more XLAs than anybody else has done globally. And as I said, I've got a lot of hands-on experience. So if you've got any questions, do please ask. We work across the globe. We work across all sectors, from MSPs to internal companies, from charities to government departments. You name it, we've probably built an XLA for it. We've worked in IT, we've worked in HR, we've worked in finance. So you'll tend to find the domain of XLAs probably been owned by IT over the last few years, but the truth is now it's broadening out into other areas as well. What we try and do as an organization is to change the way organizations report and measure the success of their product or their service. Because for far too long, what we think is that organizations have been measuring success purely based on service level agreements. And as you'll hear later, nothing wrong with service level agreements. It's just that that's not enough. The only true measure of success that you can really talk about is the success of your customer, the success of the person consuming your product or your service. That's really what we want to be thinking about. And when I say customer, I guess some people call these different people. I've heard the term end user, I heard the customer, internal employee. I guess what I mean by that is the people who are consuming your service, the people who are consuming your product, the people you are delivering your service or product to. Now, I try and avoid the term end user only because a colleague recently told me that there's two industries in the world that use the term user instead of customer. One is IT and the other one is drug dealing. So I try and avoid it as best as I possibly can. So how do we help people? Well, we have our education, which we deliver from the XLA Institute. We have the experience advisory and assessments and advisory. We help organizations know where they are and where they're trying to get to and how they get there. A lot of our time is spent in experience design, implementation and operations, helping organizations put in XLAs, put in experience measures, and helping them with the technology to support that as well. For further details on what we do, please contact our website, which is on the screen there. You can always contact me outside of this as well, and you can always contact me on LinkedIn, or I'm always available for any questions that people have. So let's get to it. So my first thing is, let's just define, before I go into many other things, let's just define what experience is. And it's really important that we all understand really the basis of what everything we're trying to do here. So experience is defined simply as how you feel. So effectively, it's how your customers, your internal employees, how do they feel about you, your product, your service, what you're doing on a daily basis. It's the balance of all the positive and negative interactions that they have with you defines their experience. So we're not doing things like a transactional experience. So you could go into a store and buy a pair of jeans and they might ask you, how did that work? That's a very transactional basis. We're not looking at customer satisfaction surveys, which are asking you how well we closed a ticket. That's, again, a very transactional based activity. We're looking at things differently, and we have to look at things differently because experience is how people feel, and it's how they feel about you over all the things they can remember, their interactions with you. So if I worked at your organization, you ask me how I feel, I don't base my whole judgment how I feel about working for your organization on the thing that just happened to me yesterday or the last 2 weeks. I weigh up all the positives and all the negative things that happen, and I come to a conclusion. Now that leads us to something very important, and that tells us that experience is cumulative, which is why we cannot measure it transactionally like customer satisfaction surveys do, like potentially net promoter scores do, like the red, amber, green smiley faces you might see coming out of a baggage hall do. We have to measure experience cumulatively because people are always consuming your product. They're always on your laptops, they're on your devices, they're using your services, and it's all the interactions they can measure. Now I'm going to come back to that point later. That's a really important point. So just remember for now, experience is how people feel and it's cumulative. It's happening all the time. A couple of key points on the back of that. What's happened in the world of IT? And I've sort of made the assumption here that a lot of you from IT, but as I said, this is the same for HR, this is the same for finance, this is the same for all enterprise services. There's a movement now, enterprise experience management, which is really what we do, because those departments, those areas are entering what we now call the experience economy. Now, that's not something I've come up with. That's something two gentlemen in America came out with. Pine and Gilmore wrote a book called The Experience Economy. That was 25 years ago. That book was written in 1999. So experience isn't a new concept. It might be new to you. It might be new to your organization, but it's been around for a long time. I'll explain that concept in a second for you, the experience economy. But what I just wanted to point out, what that means is that your organizations, your customers, your employees, They're looking for more than just service level agreements. They want outcomes, not outputs. And for years, what we've been driving is outputs, keeping servers up, answering tickets, responding to the telephone, whatever it might be. We're driving an output. We're measuring an output. What your customer now needs is an outcome. They want to know that they get that outcome. And not only that, they want to make sure they get moments that matter for them on the journey as well. But let me explain the experience economy. So Pine and Gilmore say in their book that every economy in the world will go through at least 4 stages of maturity. That's commodity, product, service, and experience. And there's probably more, but at least these four stages. And they talk about, as you go through each of these stages, commodity, product, service, experience, that the world for us who are managing and working with those services starts to change. And this isn't a revolution, this is more of an evolution. As we go through these different stages, we don't forget everything we learned from the previous stage, we build upon it. We're always evolving. Now, when I started out in IT and the components of IT were very commoditized. I've always worked in service-based companies, MSPs, outsourcers, product manufacturer type organizations. And when I started out, people were buying and selling the components, the memory chips, the devices, the hard drives, the screens, and it was a commodity-based market. But then what happened is IT became very popular. People like Dell, people like HP, and many others, but particularly those two, started to productize what they were doing. And if you went to Dell and said, oh, can I have 5,000 devices, please? They wouldn't say, yes, sure, here they are. They'd say, absolutely, you can. But what are the personas that you've got? Have you got road warriors? Have you got salespeople? Have you got administrators, super administrators? Because they had a different product for different types of organization, different types of people in the organization. So they had productized this. And then as we started to get really involved in IT, what we did is we sent out product to be manufactured in the rest of the world. And lots of other countries around the world started to manufacture product. And in the companies that I worked for, the outsourcing, the product supply companies, we started to think, oh, we're now not making as much money. And oh, look, this is happening elsewhere. And actually people had stopped doing a 3-year cycle and moved to a 4-year cycle, a 5-year cycle on hardware. So we had to think of something different. And what we came up with was services. And we started to develop services. And then every company starts developing services. So we developed onshore, offshore, nearshore. We developed service desk, proactive service centers. We developed network centers, network operations centers, remote support centers. We developed NOCs, we developed SOCs, you name it, we developed it. And coming with that, we had to find a way to manage those services. And so we started to come up with service level agreements, and we started to come up with service management processes, and we started to come up with project processes, and then agile processes, all about us managing the things that we're doing. Now, someone told me recently that the average lifespan of a service level agreement is 31 years. 31 years. And I thought, wow, that cannot be right. But when I think about it, I thought, actually, you know what? 25 years ago, I started a service desk in an outsourcing organization, and that is still in existence today in a different guise. And I reckon if I went back to that organization, those exact same service level agreements will probably still be in place, if not incredibly similar. So we've been doing this a long time. We're very mature in what we do within services, but it's about managing our own performance. It's a good thing to do. You need to do this. But when we start thinking about what our customers started to need, they need outcomes. And I've worked in IT for a long time, and I have absolutely no idea what 99.999% uptime means to me. And I work in IT. I've got absolutely no idea. Now, if I don't know, how are our customers supposed to know what that means to them? Because what's happened over the last few years, as IT has moved into the experience economy, our customers have decided that actually they don't want outputs. This is what's driven us to move into the experience economy. They want outcomes. When we say to them, well, we've fixed 90% of P1 tickets within half an hour. We fixed 90% of P4 tickets next business day. It means nothing to them. When we say we kept the server up 99.99% of the time, Monday to Friday, again, it means nothing to them. Because when they called you, they couldn't get through. When the ticket they raised wasn't fixed in that 90%. And when they wanted to use that application, it wasn't available to them. So our customers are thinking about themselves, and yet we're reporting how well we think we've delivered the service. So we have to start opening up and thinking about value to our customer and think, what is it they need? So we move into the experience economy and we have to think slightly differently. And what we now have to think about is not just doing the service management process, not just keeping servers up and just answering tickets. We have to think differently. We have to think about, what does that mean for our customer? Are they getting the outcomes they require? And the second thing I need you to think about is, are they getting the moments that matter for them along the journey? Because that's the human experience. So when I use your service desk, the outcome that I require is, I want you to fix my incident as quick as possible. I want you to restore my productivity. You could do that. But I also want some moments that matter as well. It's not just the outcome. I want the outcome, of course, that's important, but I want things to happen in a way that I expect. So I don't want to be called an idiot. I don't want to have to wait a long time. I want it to be a positive human experience as well. So when we think about experience, this is about how people feel cumulatively. And what we're thinking about, certainly what your customers are thinking about, is, have they got the outcomes they need? And are they getting the moments that matter to them along the journey? So now, therefore, with what we have to do in IT is, we've now entered the experience economy. Of course, we still have to manage our own performance. Of course, we still have to have service level agreements. Of course, we still have to manage our services. But we now have to think differently, because we also have to think about our customer, and we also have to think about what they need. Now, if you're in that experience economy, then you've got to start thinking about perspective, because it's actually perspective that shapes experience. Because what happens to people in that experience economy, certainly service providers in the experience economy, we're thinking differently. And what we're starting to think about is, what does my customer feel? Not just what I feel, but what does my customer also feel? So we have to think about perspective. And here's a couple of slides that I think describe this very well. So these are new parents over a new baby, looking at their baby, and they've just put this new mobile on the new cot and saying, isn't this fantastic? I love it. The baby's going to love this too. It's great. But when you look at this from the baby's perspective, the baby sees something very, very different indeed. The baby looks at it in a different way to we look at it. And that's what happens in our world. Our customers look at things differently to how we look at things. And that makes it really interesting for us, because not only now do we have to look at it the way we've always looked at it for 20 years, looking at our own service process and our own service level agreements and our own KPIs and our own technical measures, but we now have to start thinking, does that make a difference to our customers? By me doing this, does our customer get the outcome they need? Are they getting better moments that matter for them? And I find it really interesting, because for years, in IT, we roll out applications, we roll out devices, we roll out new services, but we don't often stop to think about the impact of our customer. And sometimes, I know, we're told to do it because we're going to roll out this application because it's going to save €1 billion a year or whatever it might be. So we're going to do it. But even then, we should stop and say, well, how might my customer feel about this? How can I make sure that they get the outcome they need through this? Is this new product service giving all the outcomes they need, or do I need to think about things in a different way? And how can I make sure this is easy for them? How can I make sure they get those moments that matter? And there's a great philosopher, a guy called Alain de Botton, and he talks about people going on an aeroplane. And anywhere you go in a major destination in the world, 50% of those people on that plane are going somewhere. And they're all excited, and doesn't matter where they're going, it's going to be great. It doesn't matter about the weather, we're going to have a great time, it's going to be fantastic. The other 50% are coming back from somewhere, and they're in a completely different frame of mind. And they're thinking, oh, I've got to go to work on Monday, and there's no milk in the fridge, and where did I park my car? And oh, look, it's raining. Yet they've experienced the same thing. They got on the plane, they had the same food, they did the same queuing, they've sat in the same seats, they watched the same entertainment, they experienced the same turbulence, they landed, went through checkout, or went through passport control, picked up their bags. They had the same experience, but two very different perspectives. So if you're going to be in the experience economy, not only do you have to think about what matters to you, but you now have to think about what matters to your customer. What is their perspective on what you're doing? So if we know what it is, we know experience is how people feel, we know it's about cumulative, how they feel cumulatively, and we think about perspective, why does this matter? Why are people doing this? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Because experience shapes people's opinions, it shapes their decisions, it shapes their actions. There's a science called affective science, which says emotions turn into feelings, emotions are physical, feelings are logical, and feelings turn into action. People do something about how they feel. They're going to be engaged, they're going to be disengaged, they're going to work with you, they're going to tolerate you, or they're going to walk away and they're going to ignore you, depending on how they feel. Because they've got opportunity to vote with their feet, vote with their wallets, and they therefore experience has consequences. Now, there's a lot of things on this slide. I'm not going to read them all to you. You can read these yourselves. But one of the key things to think about is that companies with engaged employees outperform those with disengaged employees by 20%. Engaged economies, engaged organizations save an awful lot of money. And highly engaged workforces are 21% more profitable, have fewer absenteeisms. There's a lot of data now that's coming together to say, actually, engaged, productive, happy employees are driving great value for the business. And that's about retention, that's about profitability, that's about productivity, that's about efficiency. So there's some really important measures now that we can talk to you about how employee experience drives better customer experience. And there's direct correlations between the two in some of the projects that we've been doing. But one of the biggest reasons people are actually coming to experience management is because of the watermelon effect. Because what they're recognizing through understanding what experience is by thinking about the slides that I've just presented to you, is they're recognizing all the things they've been doing for 20, 30 years may have been useful, may have been great, but they don't know. Because they don't know, because they've never really understood it from the customer's perspective. And that's the watermelon when it's green on the outside. So we're saying it's all great, but as you get into that, it's red in the middle. I have achieved in some of my roles in an MSP every single service level agreement that we've had in the book. But when I've gone to renew the contract, the customer says they don't like us. We stink, they hate us. Because what I've been focused on, as a customer once told me, is I've been focused on what's right for my contract. This is what you've told me to do, that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. Was actually your employees and your customers want them to do what's right for them, do what's right for their business, and that's the experience economy. So we have to start thinking about things very differently, and this is why it matters. So if we understand what it is and we understand why it matters, we've got to be thinking about how we do it. And so we've got to be thinking about existing measures, and we've got to think, okay, well, what's wrong with the things that we've been doing? What's the problem with everything that we've been focused on here? Now, the problem with some of these existing measures, Net Promoter Score, customer satisfaction surveys, annual surveys, they're all good things. In fact, I welcome them. I think they're all trying to do something with experience, but often they're done transactionally. A Net Promoter Score is done typically after you've done something. CSATs are definitely done after you've closed a ticket. Normally every 5th ticket or 4th ticket, you'll send a survey out. And if you send me one of those, psychologically, I'm just answering what I've just happened to me. So if you've just closed my ticket, you're typically asking me how well did we do that. I'm only answering that. I'm thinking only about that event that happened, which is why you normally get positives or negatives. It's quite bipolar in that respect. Now, annual surveys are trying to overcome that because they're asking lots of questions about experience, but they're done too far apart. So they may not be transactional like the other two, but they're done so far apart that if I've got a problem now, and we're in May now, and your survey doesn't go out until October or November, by the time you got to that, I've voted with my feet, I've voted with my wallet. I've gone and done something different because I've got my own job to do. I've got my own outcomes to drive. And if you're not helping me driving them, I'm going to ignore you and walk away. And it's easy for me to do that. It's very easy for a finance director. The rise of shadow IT has taught me that it's dead easy for employees now to bring in devices, buy devices, go and find an application on the internet, costs $150 on the corporate credit card, and IT are the last people to know about it. So that's why those surveys don't work. They are good in their own right. As long as you understand what they're trying to tell you, then they're interesting. If you want to know how well you close a ticket, CSAT's going to tell you that. But if you want to know about experience, we have to do something different. Now, remember what I said. Experience was cumulative or is cumulative. It's happening all the time. And therefore, what we need to do is measure experience cumulatively as well. We need to be thinking about experience being done consistently, continuously. That's what we're looking for. But of course, that's going to cause us a problem. And the problem is this. The problem is that survey fatigue is a real thing. Now, when you're looking at experience management, it's not all about a survey. We don't always have to send surveys out to people. We could use focus groups. We have customers who use focus groups. We run workshops with organizations. We run call sessions with organizations. We run fish bowls with organizations. We've taught organizations how to do what's called a ride along. Go and observe what's happening. Go into your different departments. Go in if you're a retail outlet. I've got a customer who's a retail customer, and they go into the stores and they start looking at how IT or their services are being consumed in the stores. So there's an awful lot of things you can do that doesn't mean it's a survey. But 95% of people send surveys out. And that's what causes some of the problems. So we've got to be thinking very carefully about how we send surveys. And what most people do when they're doing this is they send a survey out to everybody in the organization. That's called a census. We don't want to do that. Let's follow the science. So what we do in experience management is we follow the science. We use statistical science. We use sampling, and we therefore can drive confidence levels and margins of error. And if you want to learn more about how to do that, come on to some of our training classes. I haven't got time in this micro class here to tell you, but if you come on to our foundations class or our practitioner classes, we will talk you through that. But in essence, what it means is you don't need to ask everybody. If you've got 12,000 people at your organization, and I only say that because I can work these numbers out in my head, if you've got 12,000 people in your organization, don't ask 12,000 people, just ask 1,000 people. Ask 1,000 people 1 month, maybe 1,000 people the next month, maybe 1,000 people the month after that. And what that means is you get data back every single month. And we'll use statistical science to see how confident we are that that data can apply to everyone else who we've not asked the question to yet. But your audience only gets asked once a year. Now, the truth is, your customers, people you're serving, are happy to give you feedback. And they're happy to give you feedback 4 times a year. That's typically the average. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower, depending on how you do, but 4 times. I'm happy to provide that feedback to you. But it's got to be valuable. There's a big but here. And the but is it's got to be valuable to me, not to you. I'm going to give you feedback if I think it's valuable to me. So not only do we follow the science, like I just said, but we've also got to make this valuable to your customers. And the way to do that is to follow up and do something about the data. Mostly, CSAT surveys get below a 10% response rate. Why? Because no one follows them up. No one says, oh, we did this, you said that, and this is what we're going to do about that. So if you're going to go into experience management and start thinking about XLAs, you need to do something with the data. Now, are SLAs wrong then? So we want to go beyond this. Does this mean SLAs are wrong? The answer is no, and I've kind of explained why. Because SLAs are a quantitative measure of operational data. They tell us things. They tell us what to do. They tell us how to do it, how often we need to do it. The thing with SLAs, they don't equal happiness. They were never designed to measure experience. So that's not a surprise for us. But that doesn't mean they're useful. And I'll explain in the next slide how they're useful. But essentially what we're trying to do with these SLAs is to say, let's move away from the watermelon and let's move to a line where it's green on the outside. So we want to do what's right for the contract. We want to hit our service level agreements, but we need to do what's right for the organization as well. So let's see where we use this. So I should point out, experience management is now a standard. It's a standard in the Netherlands called the NEN standard. It's going to be moving to an ISO standard as well. So this is becoming much more prevalent to organizations who need to follow the standards. And this is how you do it. So how do you move beyond SLAs? This model here is our experience management framework owned by the XLA Institute that are driving best practices in experience management. And it starts with collaboration. That's you talking to your customers, the people you're there to support or serve IT to, or your services to, and saying, what do they need? What do they want? What are the moments that matter to them? Do we understand the outcomes they have? Where might they have experienced friction? So go and speak to them or run some surveys. Do something to understand how people feel about you today. Because with that, we can say, what are we going to do with this data? What's the important things we need to do? Because you might end up with lots of data. You might end up with lots of things that you might want to do. You can't do it all. No organization has the budget and resources to fix everything at the same time. So we do a business impact assessment. We follow like a ROX calculation, a return on experience calculation. And we look at this data and we say, what's going to be the most important thing to do? What's the most urgent? What's going to give us the quickest returns at the lowest possible cost, the lowest possible effort? Let's get those done first. And there'll be some things we need to plan and think about. Let's get those done second. So we start looking at the business impact of us making these changes, these experience improvements, and say, let's focus on these ones. And we might think about 2 or 3 or 4 areas that we can measure at this point in time. So we'll write that down and we'll say, here's the areas we're going to measure. But more than that, we'll create what we call an experience ambition. And we write down the experience we want to give people. So through the collaboration approach, we've now understood the experience that people have today. So we know where we are. The experience ambition is saying, this is where we're going. This is the experience we're going to give you. This is our ambition for this particular area of the product or this particular area of the service. And that's focused on 2 things. That's focused on the outcomes that we want to give people, and it's focused on the moments that matter along the journey. So we need to make sure that we give them the outcomes, but as I said before, we also need to make sure we give them the moments that matter. So let's write that down in an experience ambition. So now we've shown everyone this is the experience we want to give people. So now with the XLA, we've now got to measure that experience. And we've got to start thinking about, well, how do I drive that? How do I understand whether I'm delivering that experience? And we measure that through experience indicators. And the indicators typically form 3 categories or 3 branches, as we call them. There's X data, which is how people feel about you. And you need to regularly get X data. And we recommend do it all the time. You might have surveys or systems that can send out surveys all the time using the science that I talked about in the previous couple of slides. Or you might run a sample group or focus group rather on a monthly basis, whatever, but get the data back regularly. We need a regular cadence of data. And the more ways you can gather it, the better this is going to be. But you need to find out how people feel about whether they're getting the ambitions that we've set for them. So that's the sentiment bit. That's about how people feel about it. But that kind of tells you part of the story. We also want to measure what we call operational data, which is how well did that service perform? We know that because we are driving and measuring currently SLAs and KPIs. So let's use the relevant ones. Let's make those more meaningful and let's understand how well did that service perform? And then let's look at the technology that's being used. How well did any technology perform as well? There's lots of things we know. If you're measuring the experience of my laptop, you'll know all sorts of things about my laptop. Blue screens of death, how long it crashed, how long it takes to log in, how many freezes I have. So let's look at not just my feelings, but let's look at how well you perform the service, and let's have a look at how well the technology performed. Let's bring those 3 data points together, score them, weight them, and we can understand experience. But to make this successful in any organization, you've got to have 3 things. You've got to have the right mindset, you've got to have the right skill set, and you've got to have the right tool set. And I'm going to cover that for you in the coming slides. So this is the standard. This is what you're going to need to do. Follow this framework. And it's about how we might apply this framework to your organization. But let me just define quickly what an XLA really is. I've got a couple of slides, and I'm going to talk to you about how you do this and how you get the right mindset, tool set, and skill set. So let's think about what an XLA is. Now, if an SLA, a service level agreement, is a measure of outputs, that is essentially telling you what to do. That's going to tell you what to do. It's going to tell you how quickly to do it. An XLA is a measure of outcome. And that's about not just did we do this, but if we did that, does that drive what you need us to do? Does that make you more productive? Does that make you more efficient? Does that make you more innovative? How well those things that we've been doing, does that enable you to do your job? We're measuring that experience ambition we talked about. So that's the outcome, but also the moments that matter. Are you getting a good human experience along that journey as well? But it's the scientific measure because we're using effective science, we're using psychology, and we're using statistical science. Now, therefore, to measure an XLA, we need to ask people how they feel. But that, as I said, tells us half the story. That tells us what they feel. And if we want to understand why they might feel the way they do, then we have to combine that with the operational data I showed you a minute ago and the technical data. So let me give you an indication of what that looks like. If you want that rounded view of feelings, giving you insights into why people feel the way they do, you need those 3 measures. So let me show you what an XLA looks like. So the diagram on the left, both diagrams come from the XLA Institute. The diagram on the left is a Sankey diagram. We produce these when we go and build experience measures for organizations. The Sankey diagram is there to show you the relationship between the things you're doing today, that's all the things on the right-hand side of that diagram, security incidents and threats and server uptime and availability and boot speeds and CPU and app response times and instant resolution times, etc. You're probably doing all of those or some of those things today. Those SLAs, KPIs, technical measures have been around for 30 plus years. And some of those are relevant. But you're doing those. But what we're trying to show you is if you do those, how does that make people feel? So on the left-hand side of that, we're looking at sentiment. So if I want to make sure people feel that they can consistently do their job with technology that I provide them, then the things that I do that matter to that might be security and availability and device management and the business apps that they use, because that would make them feel consistently, if I did my job well and fixed all those SLAs and KPIs and those technical things, that would make them feel they can consistently do their job with technology. If I want them to feel that the technology is trouble-free most of the time, then I've got to start thinking about the devices again and the business apps and maybe other aspects of what we do. So we're linking sentiment to the things you do. If you don't do that, you might be doing some really important things. You might be doing some really important stuff, but it's just stuff. So you've got to relate it to sentiment. Now, most organizations we work with are doing SLAs and KPIs. Most organizations, or some of the organizations we work with, have good technical measures. Maybe they've got a DEX tool or something. Some organizations are currently trying to gather sentiment. The point of the XLA is to bring all of that together and say, how does this work combined? Because the data sets we're taking actually all interrelate, and they all interrelate underneath your experience ambition. And that drives us to the model on the right-hand side, which is our XLA stack model. Now, the XLA stack is a visual view for us to show you how this data points come together to turn data into actionable insights. And the one I've got here is just an example. Probably wouldn't have this in the real world, probably a bit wide-ranging, but as an example, if you want people to be happy, productive with your stable, easy-to-use digital workspace alongside valued service desk interactions, the outcome you're looking for is that people are happy and they're productive. The moments that matter for them might be stability, easy to use, valuing the service desk that you provide for them. So we've got a couple of outcomes and we've got a few moments that matter. So there's our experience ambition. To understand how people feel about that, I might ask them, to what extent does IT disrupt their working day? And the reason why I say that is because that relates to stability. And I know that drives productive, happy employees. I might ask them, how happy are you with the time it takes to resolve your issues? Because that's a valued services interaction, which gets them back to productivity faster. And then I might ask them, how confident are you that IT issues will be fixed completely when they call us? Because that helps them remain productive and remain happy. So those questions I'm asking are related to the ambition. That's the first thing. Now, the truth is, if they come back and say, hey, all of those things are great, we love everything you're doing, all of that really works for us, then you know what? We've achieved our XLA. We've done something really good. Now, we would have scored it and weighted it so we can provide you an actual score for that. But you've done a great thing. But the likelihood is they're going to come back and say, well, you know, and some of them they like, some of them they won't like. So if they say, we don't think IT, we're not very happy, we think IT does disrupt our working day, that's where we need the O data and D data, because what we should look at is login times, device crashes, system outages, incident volumes, because they are all indications of whether IT did disrupt their working day. And just for speed in the micro course here, if we're asking people how confident are they that IT will fix completely when they call, and they say, well, actually, we're not confident. We think IT doesn't fix things completely when we call. Then we should look at first-time fix rates and open ticket reopen rates, because they are all indications of whether we did fix it the first time they called. So these O data and T data are giving us insights to whether we agree with their sentiment. Do we understand the way they feel? And if they don't, we're going to have to find out. But that's giving us insights into why they might feel the way they do. And then we can follow that up with, okay, we understand. So what could we do to improve this? So that's what an XLA looks like. Let me just finish with the journey that people are on, and maybe we'll take some questions if people have got questions. I want a few slides here. Talk about how you do this. So hopefully now you understand what experience is. Hopefully now you know why this is important, and you know how to do it with the experience management framework and those XLA stack models that I've just talked about. So you know how to go beyond. But let's think about how you do the steps you might take. These are real world implementation steps. So we've got a model here, again from the XLA Institute. This is the experience journey framework. This is a journey that every organization is on with experience management. It starts with enlighten, goes to explore, envision, enable, execute, and embrace. And you step through this journey as you go. I don't know where you are on the journey, but you can look at this and say, where am I? And then you can know where you've got to go and maybe some of the things you should have done before if you've not done them already. So we start with enlighten. Enlighten is you working with a company, helping them understand the reasons for doing this. Does everyone agree with you? Is there a good business reason for doing it? Then we'll think about exploring your organization. Are you ready? Are you prepared? Have you got the tools you might need? What skills do you have? What budget do you have? Do you know how people feel about you today? Once we've explored, we can think about how we're going to envision. We know where we are. So how are we going to know where we go? So let's journey map each area. Let's look at those areas where people got friction, map them out. Let's think about the outcomes they've said they needed and what does that mean for their moments that matter. Let's document that in experience ambition. Share it, collaborate with it again and say, does this work for you? Does this give you what you need? And then we can start building the XLAs. This is where we start thinking about how you're going to get sentiment. I talked about that. How we're going to use the science like statistics and psychology and effective science. How we're going to bring together those other indicators, that O data and that T data. Which ones of those might be relevant to you? How we're going to calculate this and score this and weight this. And we do all of that in that enable phase. Now you've got your XLAs, but you need to do more. You need to have a team of people. You need some people who are going to do something at some point to make this happen. That's called the Experience Management Office. This is where you get the mindset, skill set, the tool set. This is about making sure that you've got the right people in the organization. Maybe it's not a brand new team. Maybe it's an extension of a team you've already got. Maybe it's part of someone else's role that you've already got in place. But you've got to have somebody to do something at some point. Someone's got to gather the data and read the data and ask, so what is this telling me and how am I going to improve experience? So you're going to need to have something like a dashboard. And this is the version that we have at XLabs. And if you want to talk about this and understand how we get to this, please contact me afterwards and we'll talk about, we have an XLA accelerator pack that we can talk to you about and it ends up in a dashboard like this for you. But you have your ambition, you have your scores. You can see here, The overall target is 75 in this ambition. We're currently at 64, so we're below target. We can look at the data, and we can look at X data and O data and T data. And in this case, it's really important because if you look at the O data, that's doing really well. Had a dip, but hey, that's above target. If we look at the T data, yeah, that's above target. So the technical teams are saying, hey, we're doing a great job. The operational, the service teams are saying, hey, so are we. But if you look at X data, that's gone well below the target. People don't like you. So this is a traditional watermelon. And you need to drill into this. And you need to say, okay, we understand the scores. We can now drill into what data points we've taken. Why do people feel the way they do? Where can we see they've got experience of friction? And what can we do about it? The so what now questions. So you need to follow the structure I've talked about to end up in a dashboard like this. And then finally, if you do all of that, you're embracing experience. Now, measuring experience, customer told me recently, measuring experience, we're easy. Improving it is hard. It's difficult. It's political, but it's worth the journey. Experience is more than just a measure, a metric. It's about improving it that matters. XLAs are the thing that drives to understand what they are and how you might improve. If you want to embrace experience, do join the XLA Institute. It's a membership organization, free for individual members. That's where all our training and these materials come from. So do join that and you get access to a lot of materials that way. That's helping you embrace experience. The website's on the screen here. But I want to leave you with this. And this is my call to action with you, really. Just remember everything I've talked about, really. But if you sum it up in this, everybody at work you come across has an experience of you every minute of every day. Everyone you interact with has an experience of you, your role, your product, your service. The question I just want you to walk away with is, given everything I've said in the last 45 minutes or so, do you want to design that experience and make it the best you can possibly make it, the best it can be, given your budget constraints, your resource constraints, or do you want to let it happen by accident? Because if you want to let it happen by accident, then great. Hopefully the last 40 minutes has been interesting and fun, but you don't need to do anything else. If you want to make it happen and design it, then follow everything I've said. Use the frameworks. Think about, how do people feel if I do this? How do I want them to feel? How can I move from just doing service to experience? How do I get into that experience economy? How do I move from just an SLA to also an XLA? And how do I go from a watermelon to a line? So with that all said, that's this course completed. I think we've got a few minutes left over. So I'll take any questions or any comments that people have, or anything people want to say.
Okay, thank you very much, Neil. So let me first share some experience. I'm so funny, sorry, that other people had with this course. So here we got Pierre Bernard. Thank you for this response, Pierre. Pierre is one of our best-selling authors, very well-known author in ITIL, which we would say thought leader. And Pierre is telling us that this presentation should be a must for any and all IT managers at the very least.
Oh, thank you.
I think that's a very nice compliment.
I appreciate
so I guess that's a positive experience. Then indeed, here we got a response from Lindsay Scott. So Lindsay Scott says that she really enjoyed you, Neil, at a event that they hosted. And it's not just for IT professionals, it's also business functions, she elaborates. Providing service can also benefit to anyone. They can benefit from XLAs. Absolutely. And then lastly, I don't only want to give us props, but we also got a response that from Rigoberto that we mentioned that this session really reflects the current IT dilemmas. So thank you all for the praise. We didn't got many questions so far. Now I can go into many of my own experiences, but I'm not sure if that will enrich everyone. Yeah, so maybe maybe
I answered them all as I went through. I don't know.
So I would think personally, so I'm just using this as private consultancy time. I would think personally that more information, the better. So we also got this survey for anybody purchasing a publication from us. But I guess that's not the case, right? Is more information better, or because we got people really filling out, I think, 25, 35 questions. Is that the case? Neil, would you say, yeah?
Well, so in terms of questions and surveys, you mean, Moritz? How do we ask them? So let me talk about that for a quick second. So the less is more in the case of surveys. I mean, you've really got to make this valuable to people. And if you're going to make it valuable to people, that means you value their time. And therefore, you've got to try and make it easy. So you've got to make it an easy way of me answering your questions, whether that's an email or I can answer in the email as a pop-up or however you're going to do it. If you allow people to answer on a mobile phone, you're going to get 17% higher response rate, but less is more. So what we see is between 1 and 3, 4 questions, you get quite a high response rate. It starts dropping off 4 to 5. But if you get to more than 8 questions, there's a big drop off. In fact, half the people start responding to surveys above 8 questions. So if you're going to make this valuable and you are going to do a survey, keep your surveys short and ask less questions. And that means you've got to think more about the questions you're asking, but ask less questions is the way it really works. We want more data, but less questions in the surveys because that's what's causing survey fatigue.
Yeah. And so our background comes from a big part from service management and ITIL. I think you as well yourself.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So here we got a response from Dominique. Totally agree, Pierre. So indeed, Pierre already mentioned that everybody should follow this if you're an IT manager. How do you experience that? How do service managers, I mean, they're usually just digging into ITIL. Is ITIL enough for them, or should they really move and just go fully into experience management and XLA?
Well, I don't think it's an either or. So look, my view here is experience isn't something different to ITIL. ITIL I think is really important. My own background, as I said, has been from MSPs and service providers. And I've done the ITIL exams, and it's really important you go through that, because I can tell you now, if you've got to get to a level of control. If your IT organization, if you're doing this from an IT perspective, if you're not in control, then very likely people have a very poor experience of you because it's too hit and miss. Fluctuates too much. So you've got to follow that process. But then, and if you look at the latest version of ITIL, they talk about value and how you get customer value. That's where experience comes in. So what we see from service managers is saying, well, I've been doing this for my career, and I've got now the service under control. What do I do next? How do I make sure this is more valuable to people? And that's where we start going into experience. What we're teaching you in XLAs and through our classes under the XLA Institute is how to do this, the detail of how to measure someone's experience, how to build a relevant XLA for someone. So it's not an either or. This is an extension and a maturity on top of that. You've got to go through that whole service management processes. You've got to make sure you're in control. So maybe a level 3 or something. And then you can start thinking, what else do I do? And that's how I got into it. I was thinking of many years ago, well, what do I do now? I've got all this under control. This can't be it, because people are still not signing up for my contract. They're still telling me they don't like me, but I'm in control. Therefore, you start thinking about adding more value by experience management. So we see in XMOs, we often see service managers come in and coming from the service management organization into the experience management organization, because it's a very similar skill set in lots of ways. It's different in a lot of ways, but there are some similarities. So I think it's a natural extension from those people who are using service management processes that are in control. Experience then takes them to the next step of the journey.
Okay, thank you. So again, Pierre is very interactive. Thank you, Pierre. So Pierre says ITIL gives you the what, and XLA and experience management gives you the how. That's a nice reminder.
Yeah, very good way of putting it.
Then I think we do need to wrap up due to the time, but I got one question from Pierre coming back to the survey point that we discussed before. Mm-hmm. And he asked, what about just asking people directly in person?
Nothing wrong with that.
More or less questions, or?
No, so we do that. I mean, in fact, so there's different ways of getting sentiment, and the more ways you do it, the better it is, right? So you create a focus group or one-to-one teams. You can do telephone interviews, which we've done before as well, or go and meet them in person and ask them questions about how they feel. They are really rich ways of getting it, because you're going to get a lot of data and into a lot of information, because you can bounce off them and say, well, tell me why that. Let me understand that a bit more. Because a survey is a one-way thing, really. It's not conversational. With a one-to-one or a one-to-few, you can have a conversation and deep dive. But there is also a difference. So I think it's important that you do it. You must have it. But asking only 1 or 2 people isn't scientific, because you might only get 1 or 2 people's views. So we have to follow science as well. I don't think it's an either or again. I think you need to do both. So you go and ask a few people through a focus group or one-to-one face-to-face interview and go and meet them and talk to them. You should be doing that regularly. But we also have to have some science in there as well that says, what they've just told you, how much does that apply to the other 5,000 people you got in your organization? because it might just be one person's view. You need to have a collective. So we need to do a bit more scientific ways of gathering it. That's the statistical science that I was talking about before on competence levels, and making sure that we can understand this is the majority of people feel this way. But we also want to deep dive. We use those individual sessions to deep dive and understand real detail of why people feel the way they do. So both are important, but both are different.
Yeah, thank you very much, Neil. Thank you everyone for participating in this session again. It was really nice. If you have any more questions, Neil said it, just ring up, send a message through LinkedIn, or get his details through XLA Institute. Thank you again, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Have a good weekend ahead, and looking forward to taking it further.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you all listening. Thank you.
Bye.
We at the Van Haren Group believe that organizations can benefit from shared knowledge and experiences, and we try to help them to do so. We are an independent, worldwide recognized content provider in management best practices and standards, well known for its flexibility and years of experience. Our education partners offer specialized training using our books, courseware, e-learnings, and exams. These partners play a crucial role in delivering high-quality education to professionals, leveraging our products to ensure comprehensive and effective learning experiences. At Van Haren Group, we're more than just a publisher. Our unwavering commitment to quality, passion, trust, fairness, and forward-thinking drives everything we do. We are dedicated to empowering professionals and organizations worldwide to achieve their goals and thrive in today's dynamic landscape. Dream, learn, and achieve with Van Haren Group.
Do you want to apply a best practice yourself and maybe leverage our services? Do get in contact with us. We are more than happy to advise how to take the next step.